Good morning, everyone. Wednesday. Who's hungover? Woo-hoo, yeah. I'm Angel Abcede. I'm with CSB Convenience Store Petroleum Magazine, and you are here at the session with talks about best practices for the tobacco core categories for convenience stores. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure other folks will be coming in soon as well. But right now, let's go ahead and hit it. We are going to introduce to you our esteemed panel of retailers and counsel for Acretec. But right here we've got Bill McCloskey from Armarts in the Chicago area. We've got Paul Casadont from the West Coast, representing Extra Mile, the Chevron brand. And we've got John Zikias, who has formerly just recently left Holmes Oil in the Southeast. And then we've got Henry Roemer from Counsel for the Acretec Group. But let me go ahead and have you guys, we'll go down this way. Bill, you can start, introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about what your business is.
I am the Chief Operating Officer of Armarts. We have 13 stores in the Chicagoland area. We have a tax advantage situation in Chicago where you go 1 mile and you pay $40 more for a carton because of taxes. So we call them liners, and we have several locations on the right side of the line. So our average cigarette volume is about 750 to 800 cartons a week. So it's a different game for us. But you know, what we try to do is be the smoker's advocate, and you know, one of our phrases now is to be the tobacco user's advocate.
Fantastic. Bill, Paul?
Paul Casadont, president of Extra Mile Convenience Stores. We have 831 stores on the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington. The Extra Mile brand has been around for about 12, 13 years. It was created by Chevron, grew up in Chevron. Just over a year ago, we spun it off, created a joint venture company with Jackson Energy out of Boise. So we're based in Northern California, a lot of stores. We sell a lot of tobacco products, and we view it as a very important category for us.
Fantastic. And whoever has the Chevron brand is going to be permitted to do the Extra Mile.
Right. So the Extra Mile store will only be at a Chevron or Texaco branded fuel location.
All right, John?
So I'm John Zikias. I recently retired from Holmes Oil. Cruiser store, 27 stores based out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And being in tobacco country, we do very, very well with tobacco products, not only combustible cigarettes, but also machine-rolled cigars and snuff as well.
All right, and Henry?
Okay, I'm a transactional attorney in private practice. I started as a sales rep for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company in 1978. I had 5 counties in East Texas. Fast forward to after law school, and I have a focus on compliance and avoiding and resolving problems in the tobacco regulatory realm. I've been 20 years or so with the law firm. It's Finger, Roemer, Brown, and Mariani. A number of various tobacco clients, manufacturers, distributors, suppliers, retailers, and others. I've coordinated lobbyists in Washington, D.C. on these matters and worked on the WTO case involving clove. And I'm on the board of directors of the TMA and the Cigar Association. Glad to be here.
Fantastic, Henry, thank you. Well, what I'd like to do is kind of get us all started out by understanding where you guys think the business is and what your major concerns are. That will probably give us a little bit of an agenda for some of the things we want to hit as we continue our conversation today. And I believe there might be a microphone out there somewhere. If people have Q&A, we'd love you to get up to the microphone. I don't see a microphone, and I will subconsciously hint at a microphone appearing. But in any case, we'll have Q&A later, hopefully, if there's time. We do want to get some of your answers done as well. But why don't we go ahead and start with you, Bill. Go ahead and talk to us about what do you think business is like these days for you, and what are your concerns?
Well, it's the poly user is the new phrase. I mean, the tobacco, the cigarette smoker who always used to just smoke is no longer just smoking. They're vaping, they're using snuff, and it's a significant customer base for us. And we really want to fight to attract that. And we're finding great success through good cashier knowledge of the category. And that's the key, because they want to know what's coming out there, and we want to have all the new brands that are there and the new types of concepts. Zyn, for example, General's new packet of nicotine. We were one of the first ones in the country to get it because it's in Chicago, and it's done very well.
Fantastic, Paul.
Business is good. 2018 was a very strong year for us throughout the store, but our growth was led by the tobacco category. And for us, tobacco really is traditional cigarettes, cigars, smokeless, vaping, e-cigarettes. So we had really good growth. The growth definitely started to tail off a bit the latter half of the year as we started to see some actions taken, like the state of Oregon, as well as we've got some flavor bans in some of the cities where we have stores. But overall, very strong growth, and we think it's going to continue, but the product mix, I think, is going to continue to evolve as well.
We'll definitely get to that as we talk about new products. John?
So, speaking back to Holmes Oil, and I still keep in touch because I'm helping them with some things, but looking at sales for us were a little bit slower to the start of last year, but got stronger as the year went along. We had a lot of competition from some of the new loyalty programs with a few of our major competitors. And as we started to focus on and were able to participate in the Reynolds program, started to see volumes return. So cigarette volumes are good. Snuff is up, not significantly, but in the 5 to 7% range. And then machine rolled cigars are still, we lead the market in sticks per store per day by more than twofold, and we're still seeing good 7 to 10% growth in cigars, led by Middleton, surprisingly, right now. So.
And when you were in North Carolina, that was a pretty heavy tobacco state, right? Was it heavy regulated as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's when you get tobacco, farms across the street from your stores, and then at the same time you've got pretty strict regulation on where you can smoke and such. So it is still a tobacco state, but it is fairly restrictive, and it's a very strong menthol state. Surprisingly, I mean, our number 1 and number 2 seller are both Newports. So.
And Henry, go ahead.
Well, my clients some are doing better than others. It's usually a measure of how savvy they are and how well they can adjust to the economic forces in the market. From a law firm standpoint, it's a little bit like walking on a tightrope because the FDA seems to be tightening up on the clients, and I just trying to keep them viable and successful and ahead of the curve, and it's a frustrating and challenging process.
Well, it sounds like we've got several topics that we're going to hit on. Definitely the FDA rules and the regulations. We probably want to kick that out first. There was a lot of discussion about that in the last couple of days with the NATO people talking on Monday, and some more discussion yesterday about that, and CBDs as well. We've touched a little bit on some product innovation, the changing consumer. We have some consumer and product movement information that came out the last couple of days. I can do a little bit of a recap before we get into it. And then I think what we really want to get to with this particular session is the category management piece and the development of the tobacco category, certainly in these changing times, and certainly with the advent of innovation and some new products within the category. So why don't we kick it off with the FDA, just to kind of get a quick, get that out of the way. So there was quite a bit of discussion early in the convention with the NATO folks talking about all the FDA stuff that had come out. The most official announcement certainly was the November 15th, where they talked about potentially the proposals to ban menthol in cigarettes, ban flavors in premium cigars, to potentially restrict the sale of e-cigarettes to certain areas of the store. If you're in a convenience store, there would have to be an age-restricted area of the store. I guess you could put the pornography back there as well. I don't know what this area of the store looks like. But more recently, Scott Gottlieb had been waving around the National Youth Survey and had been very concerned about how folks are marketing and the potential danger of youth being brought into the category over the concern of bringing taking adult combustible smokers into vaping, which is potentially reduced risk. So that's kind of where the other issue, I guess, would be the multiple and many state and local regulations, and certainly the most interesting one, we've got California considering flavor bans, which is a big deal, including menthol. Hawaii, I grew up in Hawaii, so gotta love them, but they're proposing, or there's a proposal floating around, that the minimum age is 100 years old. So when you take your walker out into the convenience store and get your cigarette, then I hope you're not selling it to your younger friends. But anyway, certainly you guys have been seeing regulation popping up and are very concerned. So why don't we just, wherever you want to hit at it, Bill, why don't you start us off with where your thoughts are?
Well, we're from Chicago, and the city of Chicago, you can't sell multi-packs, okay? You can't sell menthol around schools within 50 yards of a school. These are things you have to get around with, okay? And all we would want is a level playing field. Age restriction, if you can't have some towns have it 18 and another town have it 21, just make it all 21, okay? That's all we really need is a level playing field.
And Altria, by the way, has come out, I'm sure you've all heard of supporting, and in their last investor call a couple weeks back, they said they supported, I believe, the measures in Washington State, and I can't remember the second one, but they were definitely saying that they were supporting.
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, and not to echo, although there is a bit of an echo in here, level playing field is what we're looking for as well.
Yeah.
We don't want to be singled out in a bad way, especially the convenience store industry. We're a responsible retailer. We're a franchising company. We don't own stores or operate stores, but we certainly have standards, and we make sure our franchisees execute to those standards. So I get very concerned when I start hearing about, well, maybe some products can be available in one class of trade, but not in a convenience store, because personally, I don't think the convenience store industry is the problem, if you will.
Exactly.
When there's online sales with no age verification and all sorts of other ways to get product. You know, from a city perspective, cities, municipalities, yeah, California is kind of leading the way, in my opinion, not in a good way, but they're out there banning flavors, Oakland and San Francisco. I just saw something the end of last week. I think there was 65 or 66 more cities or towns that had some sort of pending vote coming up with their city council or whoever it may be around banning flavors and so forth. So it seems to be a really quick, in California, they see one city do it and, oh, they want to do it as well.
Exactly.
And so that's, you know, really a big part of the environment that we're doing business in. And we've seen what it does to our overall business when the flavor bans have taken place. Certainly it hurts our tobacco category, but the overall store certainly suffers because these customers are coming in and they're buying other products as well.
2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've established the tobacco customer as Uber convenience store customer.
Yeah.
John, why don't you go ahead and chime in as well? We'll have
Yeah.
Henry talk too.
I mean, echoing the level playing field, and we just want to be able to have products. I mean, the other thing that gets concerning around regulation is, one, the length of time it's taking for reduced risk products to be approved, you know, such as IQOS. I think it's almost been 2 years, I think, trying to get that approved, and it'd be something like 6 months. So it seems on some of these issues, the FDA is not moving quickly on, whereas other things like these, you know, the thing that concerns me is, I guess the FDA can't outright ban menthol. We'll see how that goes through the courts. But with all these municipalities doing different things and then not giving you information, we were talking about that earlier, it's really difficult to understand what you can and cannot sell. It's considered a flavored product. So there's got to be some consistency on this as well.
Henry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think 2019 is going to be a challenging year. And from a retailer standpoint, age verification is going to be pretty paramount. You know, you just saw that 2 big chains, Walgreens and Circle K, just had one each of their stores popped for no sale orders. And that's going to continue to rise. So that's going to be real important for retailers. The warning statement requirements, those have been deferred, but it's all in litigation. So those hearings are going on right about now, and it'll not be probably estimated until 2020 before all the guidance and all of that comes out one way or the other. I mean, if the industry wins, maybe cigars and pipe tobacco won't be subject to that. But if they lose, everybody's going to have to get up to speed on what all that means. I mean, it drills down to even, like if you run a radio advertisement, you're going to have to put a voiceover advertisement warning qualification in there. Other challenges in 2019, I think, and this is basically manufacturer and distributor related, but it'll all trickle down. I think the FDA is going to roll back the SE filing date from 2021 for, say, the flavored cigars and cigars that are on the market after 2007. And so those are going to have to be filed sometime this year. But they're going to probably predate that with some sort of guidance as to what is required about a substantial equivalence filing. And I know if I'm talking about too much detail, I'll slow down. But basically, that's just going to tell the manufacturers what they have to file to be a sufficient application. But it won't tell the manufacturer what they have to produce to get one approved as substantial equivalent. So it's a very challenging process that is going to involve, you know, constant interaction with the FDA if all of this prognosis is correct. And then you got the further products that were on the market before 2007. They're going to be subject to a tobacco product standard process that's going to take a long time after that. But it's going to be a challenging year, I think.
You know, we just to not to linger because we are going to want to talk about category issues, but often the legislators in your area don't know the economic impact of what their decisions are. And as you find it, talks like this and talks like NATO folks, they'll ask you to be more proactive in terms of getting your council people, getting the local lawmakers into your stores, letting them understand that if you ban the menthol, you're also not just banning cigarettes, you could be banning all the moist snuff and all that top-selling smokeless products as well. So it's kind of a domino effect. And of course, we were just saying, we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how the tobacco consumer is really a huge convenience store consumer. But let's go on to that point because we wanted just to touch base on category movement and the changing consumer. So I believe Altria, I mentioned, had their earnings call, and they talked about how their decline in combustible cigarettes did increase in 2018, but they are attributing it to that potential dual user,
Yes.
Trying other products, trying e-cigarettes. The good thing about Juul is that it's introducing a lot of folks to the idea of vaping. So I've heard folks say that, yes, Juul's having a good run, but they're definitely introducing folks to the behavior and the potential opportunity to switch from a combustible product. In terms of some data that we've developed from our sister company at CSP called Technomic, which follows people, more food users, but they've asked about tobacco use. And on just about every front, a tobacco user will visit a C-store more often than the regular convenience store customer. They will buy more products. They will buy more food service. They will be more brand loyal, oddly enough. And we asked the question, so do you like healthy food? No. I mean, just almost like, you can almost imagine this person. But for the convenience store channel especially, the tobacco user is pretty paramount. So why don't I go ahead and see what you guys have been seeing in the field in terms of customers.
Well, we just rolled out our Spin Back Rewards loyalty program that included multi-pack discounts on Altria. We provide for Altria our scan data at all the stores, and by doing that, we're able to get, you know, $1 a pack off on Marlboro. Well, this is really a significant amount for the everyday smoker. And we have really seen tremendous lifts in the first 4 weeks with this. So loyalty is a huge component that we want to take advantage of. We're going to roll out a loyalty program on Newport and Camel, first quarter, second quarter this year, as well as loyalty programs on Copenhagen and Grizzly. So, you know, if you can get the tobacco companies your scan data, you're in a much better competitive position. Speedway and Thornton have had this the last half of the year, and we too saw, you know, declines in sales because they had it and we didn't.
Paul?
Yeah, so we look at our product mix in the tobacco category at least once a year, and we'll do a SKU rationalization as well as bringing in new products. One of the things that we've been working on over the past 6 months or so is we're doing a reset on our back bar. Most of our stores have either an 8-foot or a 9-foot tobacco back bar. We've started to reduce the number of facings of traditional cigarettes in that back bar and have continued to add some of the new, I guess, products that have been developed in the, whether it be vaping or, you know, non-combustibles, or because we know that the traditional cigarette consumer they're limited in where they can consume and so forth, and they're buying additional products at the same time within the tobacco category. Juul, we got into Juul more than 4 years ago. And it's been a great product for us, but you know, we've had other great products before Juul that have kind of helped pave the way as well, as we continue to see declines in traditional cigarettes, but the overall category continues to be certainly a huge category for us and an important category for us.
So both of you are at least confirming this idea that more traditional combustible users have been, at least your throughput, you've been seeing that either dual usage or trial or more of a decline in one area, more of the other.
Yeah, so we try to make sure that when we've got our promotional signage, if you will, that we're communicating to the consumer not just an offer on traditional cigarettes, but on moist and smokeless and some sort of vaping product as well, so that they're aware that we have these products available for them. So whereas, you know, 5 years ago it was probably much more, we've got cigarettes, we've got snuff, and that was really what we were communicating. Now we're trying to make sure that we communicate across the board to the consumer as well.
John?
Well, you know, at Homeswell, we had worked on about 6 years ago setting up tobacco departments. And while the space stays relatively static, we look at SKU rationalization a bit more often on subcategories. So for instance, on machine-rolled cigars, we actually update the planogram every 2 months, just because there's new flavors coming out.
LTOs, yeah.
Yeah, there's, you know, the seasonal flavors and things like that. So we focus on that a bit more often. Snuff would probably be, you know, is like at least once a year, sometimes twice. And then cigarettes, we do a full kind of SKU review every year. And it's interesting how, you know, when you really drill into the data, you start seeing where product has somehow crept into your stores and it's not selling but taking up inventory and space. But then you also find certain stores that do very well on one particular brand, and there's still that, you know, one customer that comes in and buys a carton every 2 weeks. And it's, you know, when you're looking at your SKUs that way, yeah, you want to get rid of the slow sellers, but you also, if you have that one customer in that one store, you want to try and find a way to accommodate them. And then it's really just managing that back bar and shifting. We've been shifting as we see stores selling more, you know, vape products and more cigars, that will cut back on the cigarette combustible space and add more space for those other categories. But it's a really slow process because of the fixturing.
John, why don't I go ahead and allow that to transition? Unless, Henry, you wanted to chime in?
Well, I can't add much to that except to observe that I sort of perceive from a limited perspective I have that the C stores have got the top brands, the higher margin brands, and that next tier of products, you know, creates opportunities for the tobacco outlets that, you know, that are not necessarily in the C stores.
That's certainly true. C stores still hold a dominant role, but dollar stores, that's the other one. And I think what we're hearing about dollar stores was that when they figure out the right mix, they're going to be a considerable force for multiple reasons. There are a lot of them, and they're growing, and they're not as fragmented as the convenience store industry. There's like 3 major ones. Right. When they decide to do it, and they got that set, that could potentially include e-cigarettes, which they're not into now, it could happen quickly. But John, I was going to go ahead and toss it to you because I saw you at NACS talk about category management. Why don't you tee us off on this idea of category management and how folks should consider the tobacco category?
Well, as I was mentioning before, as we looked at Homes Oil and the cruiser stores, as we looked at our product assortment, what we started to do was look at what SKUs are selling. And then you'd go back and forth on, here are our top sellers. How do we make sure that we get the inventory correct first? And then once we get the inventory correct, we started working with the tobacco companies, and we were primarily working with Lorillard. And then as Reynolds bought some of their business, they have a very good planogramming tool. And it helps you manage your space so that you can manage your contracted space as well, so you don't violate any of your agreements. But it also then helps you target brands in particular stores that are doing better than maybe other brands. So it's really an opportunity to work with some of your key tobacco suppliers. And while Altria tries to do things well, they really won't help you with your planograms because they just put a bunch of retailer choice on anything that's not their product. So I found Reynolds seems to be very helpful, has a great tool, and can help you better manage, even if you want to get down to a store level or cluster level.
I'll bring it back to you, Bill, in a minute, but we did discuss beforehand several topics within category management that might be of interest to you all. So certainly, again, if you do have questions, the microphone has been set up, I see. You can just wave us down and we'll get to you. But one of the, John started to talk about this, so identifying opportunities to reduce SKUs. Bill, is this something that you've encountered and have thoughts on?
In the city of Chicago, when a carton cost $111, yeah, you better have some SKU rationalization, and you better keep track of them too. I mean, cigarette theft is a part of life, and when they're going out your door, you have to monitor them. So the category that can get away from you, I see, is the cigar category. LTOs come in, and that cigar smoker, they switch brands a lot. So all of a sudden you'll have, Purple Passion or something like that, and it was selling really well, and now you're stuck with it. So yes, you have to really keep an eye on your product mix.
You're saying if it's a fickle customer, they'll try for enough time for you to figure out that that's a good seller, then all of a sudden, oh, wait,
they're gone. They've moved on to something else.
Okay. It's like Mardi Gras, after a week, it's done.
Well,
Right.
And that's why I was saying we really look at the cigar category about every 2 months, because you just get a lot of those LTOs, but you want to make sure, especially in that flavored cigar category, I mean, that customer is looking for something new quite frequently, and if they see something new, they'll be on it. But if you don't have it, they're going somewhere else. And it's really a sales loss opportunity.
Yeah, I was just going to add, our situation perhaps is a little different. Our traditional cigarette business is over 95% premium. So we've got a really high percentage of consumers looking for the premium and willing to pay for it. So we look to a certain degree, over skew on some of the innovation, even if it's the $30, $40, $50 stuff, because the consumer that we're attracting, a lot of them don't blink an eye when they have to spend $50 to try something new, whereas not a lot of retailers can do that. But especially where we are in parts of California as well as in Oregon and Washington, it's an opportunity for us. So we probably over skew on some of the innovation, try to get in early, like I mentioned with Juul, because that served us very well over the past 4 years. We didn't just find out about it last year and jump on the bandwagon.
The other thing that was mentioned was how some of the bigger tobacco companies have been raising prices, but the deep discount, some of the lower guys have not, which has created that disparity that's more attractive to at least the folks who are down on that level. I think when I mentioned the large number of folks that our Technomic folks tracked, they didn't switch brands, but they were kind of more on the higher end. But that lower end seemed to, and I think Bonnie Herzog on Monday also addressed that as well. Is this something that you guys have seen?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some growth in fourth here, but similar to Paul's chain, I mean, we're very, very skewed towards premium cigarettes. I mean, if you look at, L&M and Pall Mall combined, it's less than 4% of our cigarette sales. And it seems like from some of the charts Bonnie was showing and Bob earlier in the week, that third tier customer, maybe the Pall Mall and the L&M customer, might be moving down to fourth tier. But I don't think you're seeing a lot of Marlboro or Newport users switching down to a fourth tier. I think that, right now with, incomes starting to rise a bit, over 7 million jobs, out in the marketplace that are available, I think consumers are feeling a little bit better. Gas prices are coming down a bit. So I think whenever you see that gas prices start to moderate a bit, you see people coming back to that third tier, but rarely do you see them trading off of the premiums.
Yeah, Chicago is not a third-tier market. I mean, it's premium cigarettes.
We were talking about merchandising in our conversation. So, Bill, one night, I'm not quite sure exactly, but my little notes say, well, merchandising. I'm not quite sure exactly all the but what are your thoughts on merchandising in terms of the category and optimizing things?
Well, you need to get some back bar space for vapes. You need to consolidate that whole back bar. Your front counters have really turned into kind of like a catch-all. And you really need to organize that and try to so when that consumer's coming in, they look to that back bar and they can see what they want. Do I want vape today? Do I want cigars? Do I want cigarettes? So we are shrinking the cigarette space and expanding on that. But it's a tough deal because, our stores are our stores and you don't have a lot of money to remodel. So this is your playing field and work with it.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, we've got a high percentage of premium cigarette smokers that come to our store, but price still is very important for them, and it's the number one deciding factor when they're deciding where they're going to purchase their cigarettes. So, as I mentioned, we try to communicate across whether it's traditional cigarettes, snus, kind of all the different variety of products that we have, and we do try to get that innovation out there because that's where a lot of the growth in margin has been for us as well, because there continues to be margin compression on the traditional cigarettes, and there has been for years, if not decades. So we've had some good experience with some of the innovation and helping to maintain margin dollars in the category and not just lose the poly user, if you will, by them finding it somewhere else.
I was going to go to John, but I realize our time is ticking down a little bit, and I do want to get to the innovation piece. If that's all right, John, maybe you can go in. So we're, in fact, bumped into the folks who sell the vaping device that gives you B12 and caffeine, and so totally not even nicotine at all. And from what I understand, the folks at Sheetz have tried it. They put it in their front counter and did very well. So I guess, can you address this idea of CBDs and potentially even hemp-wrapped combustibles? I mean, there's a lot of kind of ebb and flow and flux. And John, if you don't mind kicking us off here with thoughts?
Well, so I'm not technically a retailer anymore, so I don't, there's a lot of discussion, I know, in the chain about should we carry CBD products? I mean, should we, how do we go about doing this? Because they're starting to come up, and it's in the latest farm bill, so they're legal now, but they're coming up in beverages, but they're coming up in gummies. And if you walk around here, you see them in gummies, lollipops, pills, vape. I mean, there's a number of different formulas. I think the convenience store industry, in a lot of cases, is very quick to adopt something fairly new. I think this is going to move a little slower. There is potentially a lot of opportunity, but I think there's also a lot of consumer confusion. And Paul and I were even talking earlier about, I've seen some of the new waters come out, and the way they state the amount of CBD in the water is it's translated differently. So it becomes difficult for a consumer to really understand what's the difference between these two products and which is better for me. So I think there's got to be a lot of consumer education. I think there's going to have to be a lot of retailer education, and then it's just really getting consumers to understand that this isn't maybe a bad thing, that it's got some real benefits to it. But it's going to be a challenge. I mean, I think this is another one of those fighting it a lot at the local level because it's the same as vape. I don't think initially everybody really got behind that vaping could be better, and all of a sudden you had pretty much every state that has any type of indoor tobacco ban is doing the same thing for vape, or has already done it. So I think we've got to get out in the front on this, and it's very fragmented right now. So I don't know where retailers can get the information to even go out and go forward with this and talk about it intelligently, because there's a lot of books that I've seen in the show here, you know, understanding CBD, but that's one point of view. So
Bill?
it's a big one.
Thoughts?
I concur, yeah. I mean, it's where we go down the road, you just want to make sure that you follow the rules and that you're proactive in making sure that you're doing everything right. Because, you know, you don't want to get a black eye within the industry in terms of not following what the FDA has said.
Paul?
Yeah, no, I mean, we love innovation, but we're staying away from CBD at the moment. We're going to let things play out a little bit more, and we'll let somebody else cut their teeth on it before we jump into it.
Well, there was going to be some more discussion about CBDs, and I believe the legalization, the legal aspects of it is, in a couple more sessions. So not the next one, but the one after that. So you want to stick around for that. But they did touch upon some of it the other day, and I actually asked the question. I said, so talk about legality. And they discussed certainly about trying your due diligence and making sure that you know the manufacturer that you get your stuff from has a very certified, a lot of processes that where they grow the stuff, how they manufacture it, et cetera, et cetera. And one gentleman, I believe he was one of the lawyers, said, yeah, well, in the past, you could be, people have been like slapped on the wrist, or it could be jail.
Right.
And then we all went, jail?
Yeah. No, it's, you know, and for every CBD sample that arrives at our office, and you know, they'll have a letter stating how it's a legal product and so forth. I can produce a letter saying, no, you know, that's not legal. So there's just too much uncertainty right now, and so we're like I said, we're gonna take a little bit of a back seat on this one and see what happens. Make it a little clearer before we jump into it, if we would.
Yeah, I might just add that it's a big gray area. For example, CBD in food, that really is subject to FDA regulation if it's ingested. And then you got state and local issues. The Farm Bill, as little as I know about it, understand about it, is that if it's less than 0.3% THC, it's no longer, or it's a different part of the classified substance list. So in generalities, that means that the Department of Justice no longer regulates it, but the FDA does. And if the FDA is doing what they're doing with tobacco, it's just going to be kind of, you know, wait and see and, you know, proceed with some caution.
Well, and that's where, I mean, even, this is the confusion within states, because I was reading an article the other day where a truck of hemp was seized in Idaho. You know, again, it's below that 0.3, but in Idaho, it's any THC is illegal. So, you know, and this was going from Oregon to Colorado, but they got it in between just at a truck stop. So I think it's the category is going to have difficulty if there's not some consistency around the country.
Yeah, so for those of you who weren't here, we were talking about the Farm Bill that basically turned hemp from a Schedule I drug, like heroin, down to like Schedule V, which is like Robitussin. So it's going to be federally legal to grow, produce, and put on shelves. But all of that stuff still has to trickle down, and the different states have different laws as well. So the advice was to check out your state laws, make sure you're abiding by them, and potentially go out to the law enforcement folks, the police, reach out to them, and make sure that they understand that some of the stuff you're potentially bringing into your stores or plan to qualifies our lawful products. Are there any questions? I invite folks right now to raise your hand or walk up to the microphone right there. Okay, there's a question right there. Why don't we, go ahead, gentleman in the aisle, and we'll take that second question out there. Well, we need the microphone up on the, okay, go ahead, there you go.
There we go.
It's on now. If you could look out 5 years from today, looking.
TPD attendees coming up at noon, fantastic session in the United States.
I thank you for that voiceover. If you could look out 5 years from now and just trending out the compression of tobacco margins to the retailers, what will you?
The power of partnerships, how to leverage vendor relationships to grow your business. That's at noon at the Ignite stage at the back of the show. Attend a free, valuable session how to leverage vendor relationships to grow your business, starting at noon in the Ignite stage at the back of the hall.
Your answer will be at noon.
Well, I was going to apologize for the announcer because obviously he's taken away the win from this lovely group. But if you were to look out 5 years from today, with the advent of margin compression in the traditional tobacco industry, fighting against the non-combustible or new entry with double and triple margins, how do you think your decision-making will change? And where will it end up? Combustibles or new products?
So you're asking, looking out 5 years from now, compression of margins on tobacco, how do you think some of us would set up that space to offset that margin compression on combustible cigarettes with other products?
Correct.
Well, so for us, we've got a larger store than just an 8 or 9 foot tobacco back bar. So we are trying to make sure that our franchisees, as well as our overall offer, is continuing to grow kind of across the board, that it's not too many eggs in one basket. And certainly, as we get better at selling food service and immediate consumption beverages, some of those items have a much higher margin than traditional tobacco. So we're trying to up our game across the board. And on the tobacco side of things, I think the innovation is going to continue. I'm sure some of the newly made products now, the margin will start to compress on those things. But I think as we continue to see innovation, and I think we'll have those opportunities to try to make up some of the margin dollars.
And I think what you'll see is, over time, space will shift. You're going to have to keep a close eye on your combustible products and how they're selling, but you've got to make room for new products, because if you don't give it the space it needs to at least show consumers you're in the business, and that sometimes is a challenge when you get these multiple flavors. But if you just have a new device in one flavor, don't waste your time. I mean, if you're going to get into it at least with enough of a representation of new products that consumers think, okay, this is a reasonable outlet where I can get the product.
And maybe I would just add one last thing. For us as a retailer, if a manufacturer comes to us and it's kind of a Me Too product and it's the same or lower margin than something I'm already selling quite a bit of, there's really no incentive for me to bring in the product and to give it a try.
And all of this goes in line with the merchandising discussions. We're talking SKUs. There was another question, gentlemen.
Yeah, and this is going to kind of piggyback off that, but in terms of SKU rationalization and category management, we all know, for example, what Juul's done in the market, and now out there's 45 Juuls basically that are the same product. How do you all decide, looking at those products, what to bring in versus stuff that you guys aren't going to be concerned about? For example, where you're saying it's the same product, we may make less margin on it, so it's not worth bringing in. So just how do you decide on what new products to bring in, and what do you all look for in those?
So I'll jump in quick. Fortunately, I've got a fantastic tobacco category manager that's here in the audience today. And so he's been in the industry. He knows C-stores. He knows C-stores to consumers. He knows the tobacco industry really well. He's very on top of trends. I mean, we certainly look for manufacturers that are willing to work with us. And when I say that, in the sense that before we bring the product in, we're going to know what the exit strategy is, because we don't want to get stuck with 830 stores with a new product that may or may not be pretty pricey and nobody wants to buy it, right? So we're looking for people that are out there trying to create demand for their product, but at the same time, we kind of want to have that parachute on before we get into the airplane.
Yeah, we don't want another Enjoy, where we were all sitting holding a lot of product, and that was a poor exit strategy. So,
All right, at this point, what I'd love to do, because we are a little bit over time, is to just go down the line and see if there's anything that you've seen at the show or anything that inspires you going forward with the tobacco category. Bill, why don't we start with you?
Just the innovation that's out there is just astounding to me. We have to look at what we're selling in our product mix and see if any of that can work in our traditional C-store.
Yeah, I just walked through this morning. I hadn't been here Monday or Tuesday, but I'm pretty surprised at the size of the show, to be honest with you. I'd been to NATO shows in the past, but I probably hadn't been to one for 6 or 7 years, and the size of this show is, to me, really encouraging. Because there is so much innovation, and like I said, I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, I would say the interesting thing I've seen is the amount of different CBD products between oils and gummies and candy and popcorn. I was pretty surprised about that. But then also the closed systems and open systems for vaping, and how they're getting smaller and smaller in some cases.
Join us in 5 minutes at the Ignite stage for the power of partnerships. How to leverage vendor relationships to grow your business. Join a fantastic panel of speakers to learn how-tos on how to leverage vendor relationships to grow your business. Starting at 5 minutes at noon at the Ignite stage in the back of the hall.
I'm writing a note for the suggestion box next year.
But it's interesting how you see here, there's both ends of the spectrum where you've got, I've seen a disposable, vape stick that's, similar to, I hate to use Juul, but similar to Juul. There's a lot of other products like that, some heat not burn products, but then quite a few open systems. So it's still pretty amazing, the assortment and where the category is going and the innovation.
That's right, and we are still awaiting the IQOS device, the heat not burn device. So when that comes on the market, hopefully relatively soon. But like you said, it was 2 years in the making so far. So, Henry, other wrap-up thoughts for us?
Sure. Well, I'm just encouraged about the economic vibrancy that's going on in this show. I mean, there's just so much entrepreneurial effort. I mean, it was a couple of years ago, it was electronic nicotine devices, and now it's morphed into CBDs, and it's just really great to see that, the drive to make a profit, to be a successful small business person, sort of validates never bet against America. You guys men and women are doing it.
All right. Well, on behalf of CSP Magazine, I thank you all for coming. Thank you to our sponsors, Cretech and the TPE Show. Thank you to our great panel of retailers and Henry here. And go on and have a great day. There's another session, obviously, coming up in 5 minutes.